Mike Newman, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I appreciate you setting aside some time for us.
No problem at all. Thank you for having us.
I got to thank my brother really for guiding me in your direction, because I hadn't actually come across the story and all your achievements, and then my brother just sent out a text message on our group chat for a lot of our local friends and was like, "Lewis, this guy's a great speaker. The story's awesome," and I'm looking forward to it. So, for those of you that perhaps haven't met you or come across your story, it'd be great to just give us a bit of a rundown of all the achievements that you've got that has given you the title of the world's fastest blind man.
Well, just for people to know that I was born without sight, but I always had from a little boy a passion for motorsport and a big passion for high performance cars and to some degree motorcycles. And that passion stayed with me through my teenage years. And obviously, I got to that age around 17, 18 when my friends were taking the driving tests, but I wasn't because I couldn't see. And that was a difficult and challenging time. But we got through that. We passed into sort of adult life, developed a career, but still had a really good, keen interest in cars and motorsport. And got to later in life when in my late 30s, early 40s, and I started just constantly saying, if I could see, I'd definitely buy that particular V8, or if I could see, I'd have that particular motorcycle. And then I got tired of saying if I could see. So this is a conversation I'm having with my head rather than anybody else. So I said, well, what if, rather than just if, what if I could find a way of experiencing the exhilaration of being on a bike, or the exhilaration of being behind the wheel of a high performance vehicle. So that once I started to think in this direction, then negativity turned to positivity. And if you look for a way or a solution rather than just see the problem, there tends to be a solution. Now, clearly, I can't go and buy a car. Well, I can buy a car, but I can't go and take a car on the streets and that. But I thought there must be a way for only for a few minutes that I can experience of being in control and get out the passenger seat and into the driving seat. So I set my sights, first of all, to see whether I could ride a motorcycle and how that could be done, what environment we would be looking at doing it in. And so clearly the environment would have to be an big open space. So a formal runway would be a good place to start. So we found one of those, a place in Alvington, which is a former air base, nice long wide runway. Also, we've got taxiways and other bits and bobs you can ride around. So having found a venue, then we had to figure out how it was going to happen and then get the venue's agreement to let us actually do this crazy idea. So I started talking to a good friend of mine who lived nearby, and we used to meet regularly for a couple of beers in the local. And he was also a very keen biker. And I said, look, I fancy seeing whether I can actually ride a bike rather than being on the pillion, see if I can actually take a bike and be in control of it. And and to his credit, rather than say, well, you must be mad, you can't see, he said, well, okay, let's think about that. So we did. We thought about it, we talked about it over many beers and many conversations. And eventually we decided to move away from theory and see what practicalities would take place. So we got agreement from Alvington to let us go there and have a go. So we packed a van up with 3 bikes and off we went. Got to Alvington because we live over in Lancashire. Just got to Alvington, got the bikes out, and we thought we'd start modestly, having obviously never ridden a bike in my life before. So we thought we'd start modestly with a moped. So let's just explain how this was going to work. And this point when we're getting the moped out the van, we're still talking theoretically here. So in theory, what was going to happen was that I was going to get on the moped with my helmet, and I was going to be linked via radio to my friend and navigator, and he was going to give me directional information from his bike when we set off. So I'm on the bike on my own, he's on his bike, and he's communicating to me helmet to helmet through a radio link. This is the theory.
Is he behind you? Is he behind you there?
He's behind me, but out of the way. So if things go pear shaped, he's not getting involved.
And the idea is he's telling you left, right,
That's
like
it.
just stick. Yeah.
That's it.
And you hadn't, like I said, it's all in theory at this time. So
at this point, it's theoretical.
There's no real test that's had. This is the test.
This is the test. So I get on the moped, and yeah, comms are good. So off we attempt to set, and I couldn't get a feel for it. It just the frame of the moped. It was an elderly moped, to be fair to it. The frame was flexing, and I couldn't get a sense of balance. It was just something off. It wasn't working at all. And I tried a few times, and I said to my friend, it's not working. I can't get a feel for it. It's just not happening. It's all about feel. If you can't see it, you need to feel it. And it just wasn't there. It just wasn't connection at all. So to his credit, he said, well, since you've come all this way, you've got a 2.5 hour drive. Let's get the bigger bike out and see how we get on.
Still theory.
At this point, because I couldn't ride the moped. So we moved up from a 50cc moped to a 900cc Kawasaki.
Wow.
So I get on the bike, comms are good again. This time, however, it's not a twist and go like mopeds are. This is a proper unadapted mean machine. And so bring the clutch in, kick it into gear, drop the clutch, and off we go. Balance straight away, connected. It was unbelievable.
No way.
It just worked. So comms are good now, as far as I can tell. And I'm off. I'm moving up the gearbox, because obviously we talked about how you change gear, and I understood that. I understood exactly how that would work. So I'm moving up the gearbox, and I'm going along, and I'm having fabulous fun. And at this point, I'm really enjoying myself. I'm on the bike, it's moving, I'm doing it, I'm changing gears, and I'm just enjoying. Now, what I want to say here is, when I get on the bike, as it were, I'm not getting on a bike thinking I'm a blind man trying to ride a motorbike. I'm just me trying to ride a motorbike. I'm used to being blind. That's where I live. So it occurs to me, when I'm having so much fun at this point, that actually I've not heard from my friend for a while. Radio's a bit quiet, so I thought it's probably very prudent then to stop and see what's going on. So I bring the bike to a halt, and my friend pulls alongside, and he says, "I'm glad you've stopped. I've been shouting at you for a quarter of a mile."
Oh wow!
And we discovered at this point there was a radio issue, which later on we resolved. But at this point, we didn't know what the problem was. But what we did know, based on the fact that my friend was following me down the runway, is that when just before I hit the brakes, I was doing 75 miles an hour.
Wow!
So I was pretty impressed with myself, to be fair.
So this is the second time you're on a bike.
Well, it's the first time on a bike, so I couldn't get the
first time on a bike, but second bike you were on in the first time.
Couldn't get the moped moving. So
wow.
what we did then, we had an idea what was probably going on with the radio. So what we did then is we pootled around at a slower speed. So kept the revs down, kept the speed down, and I just spent a bit of time riding around the airbase, which, to be fair, was fabulous, because I was actually riding a bike. And if I couldn't, I just stopped, and we'd figure out and try and get it going again. And what we did in the end was that we realised that the radio needed to be on what you call permanent transmit, so that I could hear that there was a connection. If you have voice activation, the link drops out until you start speaking again. Mm-hmm. So you don't actually know if it's working until you try. But if you keep it on permanent transmit, you can hear there's a connection there. So what we needed to do then is get the radio to transmit permanently for a bit longer than it's programmed to do. So we got that changed, and we knew that so even if my friend's not talking, I know there's a connection. it's not lost. And you could hear when it drops out. So if it drops out, we stop the bike. So we fixed that, and then a few months later, we managed to go back to Elvington, and I achieved my first world record, managing to achieve 89 mile an hour on a motorcycle. In practice, wow. However, we got 110, which I was very, very, very pleased about.
Wow. So if you don't mind me just sort of rewinding a little bit, because that's one hell of a story. I mean, I've got so many things that I'd like to ask, but I think the first thing I want to ask around is, where did your passion for cars come from? So you spoke about it from an early age, but what can you kind of remember the first time you went, okay, what is this, and this is something I want to be a part of?
I think I remember being a very tiny little boy and loving them. I can't remember. I think if you talk to someone who's a big football fan, they've probably always been a football fan. They've seen the ball, they want to kick it about, and I love it, and they do it, and then they want to watch it. Well, football is a great game, very inclusive for everyone, but not my bag. Cars are my bag. Motorsports, what excites me, and so as long as I can remember, I've enjoyed them and wanted to be in them, working with them, and well, driving them, which is a bit more difficult.
Was this a part of your family that were
my parents are driving instructors.
Right. Okay.
There's a link there. My mum was always very keen on cars, and she had some nice cars when she was younger. So I think there's always been a family interest in motor cars. Not so much motorcycles, I must admit, but certainly motor cars. I must admit, when we did the motorcycle, my mum wasn't sure about that at all. However, bless her, she always supports the crazy ideas that I have. And when we were ready, we were ready to do the record run, and it was quiet. And someone, bless their hearts, with every good intention they had. So we planned and prepared everything as best we could. But there's still an element of risk. You can't remove that. So someone says to me, my mum, "Don't worry, air ambulance is on standby." So at this point, my mum was worrying more than she was. I think the comment was meant with good intent, but she didn't need to know that the air ambulance had been informed and was on standby.
Rest assured, we've got the most help from the emergency services that you could possibly get. That's exactly what she would have wanted to hear. Did they? You said they were supportive. Were there any? I mean, apart from there probably being a moment of doubt thrown in there with that story, but were there any times when you were growing up where people told you couldn't? People told you that you weren't, this is not for you, like, come on, Mike, let's be serious about this. And
well, in life, regardless of your circumstances, I think there's always going to be someone who says you can't do that. And there are some things that I can't do, but there are some things that you can do if you find a way to do them. I used to ride a bicycle when I was a little boy, and my mum bought me a bicycle, and I used to just ride it around the garden because that was a safe environment. Wasn't likely to knock anyone over if I go down the street or ride in front of a car. So I used to ride a bike around the garden and enjoyed that. So she was all supportive, and she's very careful not to wrap her little boy up in cotton wool, despite the fact I couldn't see. She was still able to let me be a little boy and play and reach for my dreams, as it were.
I think that is a really important little message there, because I work with a lot of young students as well, like students at schools, and that anywhere between the ages of like 12, 13 up to 18 into their 20s.
Yeah.
But I see more this fear from young people to push themselves beyond some boundary that they may perceive or think they have, or maybe someone has set that level of expectation or that boundary for them to have.
Yeah.
And I think your story is literally there about talking about pushing your boundary out, going out of this, well, hugely perceived comfort zone, and someone to tell you, well, why would a young blind boy be on a bike, like cycling, like what? Was there an element of your parents supporting that and saying, well, push yourself, but we're here to catch you and guide you and help you along the way? Because I think that's really a really big message for young people as well, to recognize that it's not safe.
No, they were, and there's as most living as an element of risk.
Yeah.
And even everything you do, coming downstairs, going outside, slipping on a patch of ice, everything you do has got an element of risk. And what we did and what we do is we accept the risk. We're not blasé about it. We're respectful of what we're trying to achieve. But you plan to succeed, plan for success. So preparation is important. Understanding how you're going to achieve what you want to do, and make sure you've got the right people in place for that, and support mechanisms, that's friends, family, and also you've got the right equipment in place that will enable you to look and achieve what you're trying to do. Now that can be from whatever it is that you're trying to manage.
Yeah.
So moving forward from the motorcycle, I started to think about cars then, you see, because that was my main passion.
Yeah.
Logic said to me, that doesn't mean that's logic to anybody else, but logic told me that if I could ride a bike, I reckon I could be okay on four wheels, and I could drive a car. So we've got friends of mine come in. So I've talked to some friends of mine, and we managed to pull a team together and find a vehicle that would achieve the sort of speeds I was looking for. At this point, it's probably worth saying that I wanted to be in the car alone again. So we were going to use a chase car with a navigator. So we have a chase car with a driver in it and then a navigator. And at this point, my parents are involved. My dad now is my navigator.
Oh, wow.
So we do some training with him. So this is where you never know what's around the corner. No one can see around the corner. And when I was 17, one of the things that I wanted to do, one of the things my dad wanted to do as well as a driving instructor was teach me to drive. And he couldn't, because I couldn't see. But now, moving the clock forward many years, he's now helping me learn how to drive at high speed in a powerful car. So conversely, he did get to teach me and help me drive a car. So it's not something neither of us.
Just what's not legal on the roads.
Yeah, can't drive on the road. It's not legal on the road, but it's perfectly safe where we were doing it.
Yeah.
And legal. So in a different way, maybe, but he got it. We both did what we wanted to do, and he was helping me with my ambition of driving a car. So where we are, we have a record to go for. The record was 142 mile an hour. So wow. We had a goal to aim at, and we first trick is to find the environment. So we go back to Alpenton, and we know that venue. We know it's got the space we need just about. So the next challenge is to find someone who will lend me a vehicle to do it in. So this is a trick. So I can't see, and we're going around many different places, saying, I need a car that's capable of 150 miles an hour. Is that something you're prepared to lend me? And why would we do that? You can't see. Okay. Eventually, however, we did find a local dealership where we live, who was prepared to listen, and who was prepared to support, which was fantastic. So in 2003, back at my own favourite airfield, we're sat at the end of the runway, and I'm now out of the passenger seat, and I'm sat behind the wheel of a brand new Jaguar.
Wow.
I'm a bit of a Jag fan, by the way.
Right.
So I'm sat behind the wheel of a brand new Jaguar. The engine's running, and so I'm sat there. I've got my earpiece in. My radio's connected, and then the radio comes to life, and my dad's on the radio. He says, "Okay, ready when you are." So this is the moment of truth. I can hear the radio. I know I've got a connection. My dad's not saying anything at this point because I've not moved off. So there's a couple of seconds where we've had training, we have practiced, so I know what I'm expecting to do and how to do it. So we're sat it there, but there's nothing like being on your own, as you know. I imagine when you pass your test, the first time you go out in the car on your own, it's nothing like the times before when you had somebody with you. So I'm there, so it's all quiet, and then decision time. And the decision I made was to bury the throttle into the carpet. And this point was awesome. The car leaps into life. So I've got a supercharged V8, and it leaps into life, and it starts to fly down the runway. And I'm now getting direction information, constant communication with my navigator, and I'm in. I don't know where I am, but it's somewhere close to heaven, I reckon. And I'm just having an absolute blast. And before I know it, I got the command to hit the brakes very hard because we're running out of space very fast. And we get to the end of the run, and to my amazement and extreme satisfaction, we peaked out at 154 mile an hour.
Wow. That to me, I've never been that fast in a car, so I've never been that fast. But I can only imagine that as you're gaining that speed, the movements and the directions, the directional information that you're getting is really crucial, because of the faster you're going, any small movement is just exacerbated. So for you, you're working purely on feel, and you don't know the speed you're at either. You're purely on feel, whatever this. That speed ever is.
Yeah, I have an idea. That I know that I'm going fast, and I have an idea of that. Now, the record, to be fair to people watching and listening, it's a straight line record, so we're not going around bends at high speeds. But however, the ground undulates. It's not
Right.
like a snooker table. So ground undulates, and because it undulates, the car is constantly changing direction, and you have to correct that change, if you like. And so you need to be mindful of not too heavy on the wheel, but you have to turn it enough. So you have to do that. So you have to react to the information I'm receiving. And it was wonderful. So second world record achieved, and I'm extremely proud, and with fantastic support. We raised some money for guide dogs, and it's just an all-round amazing experience. And it's something I've been thinking of in every waking moment for a long time. So I get home and wake up the next day, Saturday. I've done it on a Friday, so next day Saturday, and I've done that now. This time last week, this is what was on my mind. I've done it now, and that was amazing. What's going to happen now? And then this is all conversation in my head, but I do a lot of this in-head conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to myself, oh my, when you were little, you wanted to be a racing driver. Well, racing drivers don't go 150 mile an hour. Racing drivers go 200 mile an hour.
Oh.
And then I thought, oh dear. Okay then. If I'm going to be a racing driver, I've got to get a move on. So the idea was sparked in my head that I'd like to try and be the first person without sight to try and take a car over 200 mile an hour unaccompanied, i.e. in the car on my own. So I talked to my friend John, who's been helping me with the record, and who also now co-founder of the charity that we set up, and said, look, mate, I need to go again. I've not gone fast enough. So obviously at his point, he thinks it's all over, my driving's finished. But no, I want to go quicker. I explained the logic, so far as logic goes, which doesn't really.
Yeah.
After a lot of trials and tribulations and a few other records, 11 years later, in our own favourite airfield, I'm now sat at the end of the runway again. But this time, I'm sat in a specially prepared Nissan GTR, and this
Wow.
was prepared from the ground up. We found a fabulous company down in Tewkesbury, and a guy called Ian Litchfield, a specialist car improver, I suppose you could call him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He makes fast cars very fast.
Yeah.
And so he built this car from the ground up, which means he uprated the suspension, he uprated the brakes, he uprated the engine, transmission, and put a roll cage in. So this GTR was running 1,000 horsepower, and absolutely phenomenal piece of equipment. So I'm back at my runway, and we're with me dad again, and this time, and we've done a few records in between, just trying to get it a bit nearer. But this was the big one. 11 years later, this was the big one. Again, I hit the gas, get the car steady, make sure we get all the ducks in a row, and then I floor it, and we get to the end of the runway again, and we stop, and I've done it. I've managed it. 204 miles an hour. I was over
204. Wow.
I was over the moon. It was fabulous. But that was the, if you like, the end of the journey. But there was a journey between the Jaguar and the Nissan.
It was 11 years, you said?
Yeah. So there was a journey between the Jaguar and Nissan, because there's quite a few cars out there these days that will do 200 miles an hour. But they will do it if you've got lots of space, a few miles to do it in, to build up the speed. There's not that many that will do it in and stop in 1.9 miles, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So finding a vehicle that would do that was a challenge. And we had a couple of attempts with a few vehicles that were phenomenal motor cars. And in 2005, I was able to get my hands on a BMW M5, supplied by BMW, and I managed to increase my speed there from 154 as a top speed, 144 as an average, because it's averages that Guinness are interested in. And right. So we increased our top speed to 178 with an average of 167. So we're heading the right way. We're getting there, get a bit closer. And then a few years later, after a few trials and tribulations of trying to go to America because of the space out there, and not being successful, we came back and refocused in the UK. And I was also, incidentally, I was also been a big fan of Campbell family, Donald Campbell with Bluebird. And Donald Campbell was the first chappie to hold simultaneously land and water speed records. So while I'm trying to get my 200, I started to think about, what if I could, in a small way, emulate what Donald Campbell did. So 2013, I had to regain my record because another blind chappie who was very keen on cars as I go, and he'd gotten a bit quicker than I had. So at this point, I thought I'm going to try and regain my record, but I'm also going to try and see whether at the same time gain a water speed record as well. So I was introduced to a fabulous guy called Drew Langdon, who lives down in Tor Bay, in Devon, lives in Exeter, and he has a rather fabulous offshore Formula One powerboat. So we met him, and I said, I want to go for a land speed record and a water speed record, because the only guy that's ever done that before was Donald Campbell. So amazingly, he agreed to let me borrow his boat. And in September 26, 2003, I was at a different airfield this time, and I'd been amazingly I've been lent by a friend of ours, a rather lovely Porsche GT2.
Right.
Now, what I didn't tell my wife at the time, that this was nicknamed the Widowmaker.
Oh no. Yeah, leave that information out.
You need to know basis. So we managed to get the record back in the Porsche, and we bumped it up then to 188 miles an hour with an average of 186. So what's interesting about that is how close the two, because when you do a record, you have to do it in two different directions within the hour.
Right.
If you think the top speed I achieved was in the Porsche was 188 miles an hour, but my average speed over the two runs was 186. You get an idea that we'd effectively got the most out of the car between the two runs, which is important because it needs to know I'm doing the best I can with the kit I've got.
Yeah.
So that was in September, and then in November we went down to Devon, and we had a weather opportunity, and we were able to gain the water speed record, achieving 93 miles an hour in this boat. Now that was such a different experience, because not only do you have the directional information to be working with, but you're going over 6-foot waves. So this was such an unbelievable experience, because when you go over the wave, it can be 50 feet or so before you're back in the water. So the difference with this record attempt is I had to have somebody with me because it was a two-man boat. You have a guy that steers it, which was me. Then you have what you call a throttle man, which was Drew, the boat owner. And when the boat comes out of the water, you have to drop the throttles back so the engines don't over rev, because the propellers aren't in water. So it's important. You need two people to race the boat. It was, as I say, going over these waves. It was the best roller coaster ride I've ever had.
Wow, that is absolutely incredible. And that, I think one of the things I'd like to ask you is if someone out there who knows they have a dream and aspiration, but there's an element of that they're going to have to take a risk, because everything that you're talking about there's an element of risk, and you've mentioned it before. What would be your advice to someone that is that is tossing and turning with this idea of, I want to go and chase after my dream, but I'm a little bit worried about taking the risk?
Well, someone told me a little while ago, there's two types of people. This is probably making it simplistic, but there's two types of people. There's those people who say and think I can, and there's those people who say and think I can't. And the interesting thing about that is they're both right. If you think you can't, you won't. If you think you can, you probably will. And that's the difference. So if you think you can't, you won't do it. If you think you can, that means you're going to have a go. You're at least prepared to try. If you're prepared to try, then there's an opportunity for success. And you'll know that as an athlete, as a cricketer, you'll know that you have to. Can I do this? Yes, I can. But you can't. But you have to make an effort. Then it takes effort. It takes hard work, and it takes self-belief. Is the key to it. Self-belief is what will get you out of bed in the morning. It will get you on the phone talking to people. It will get you, wherever it is you want to do, it will get you to that place. Without self-belief, it's not going to happen. And you also need support. No one can do things on their own. Everyone needs support around them, and engaging that support is where I've been very fortunate. Fabulous support and help. And if you think about my day-to-day life, as it were, I'm someone who can't see where they're going, so I have a fabulous guide dog. Now, that fabulous guide dog, he helps me get from A to B, and he makes getting from A to B much easier. And I rely on him, and he supports me. So, going out on the streets is an element of risk. just getting from A to B for anybody. Getting from A to B when you can't see is more risky. But the choice is you do it or you don't. You sit in the house and don't go anywhere, or you say, I'm going to go. I want to go to the shops. I want to go to the pub. I want to go for some. I want to go for a meal. So you get out there and do it, and that's what it's all about: self-belief.
Yeah. Have you ever has Stan, your guide dog, ever managed to get into one of the cars?
No, I don't put the dogs in the car. Well,
No.
there's been one exception.
Yeah.
And the exception was when I was stuck for someone to hold on to him when I was doing a bit of training. So we did. I did not my dog, but my dog of many years ago. And he got in the car when I was doing a bit of a run, and he just took it in his stride and fell asleep.
Okay, not a great navigator.
He wasn't. You get on with it, Dad. I'm going to have a little rest back here. You carry on doing what you're doing.
So I'd like to talk about the charity and the work that you're doing now. So just describe to people the charity, where its inception and the work that you do.
Okay, so what happened after the success I was fortunate to have in the Jaguar, I started to go to different car events, and because obviously that's my interest. And whilst going to these events, I started to meet quite a lot of people who also had interest in motor cars, but they also were having to live with a disability as well on a daily basis. So these people that I was meeting had been struck down with disability in adult life, either through illness or accident. And the consequence of this particular disabilities they were living with meant that they lost their license. And whilst they're trying to rehabilitate, while they're trying to put their life back together and a new life that they don't deserve, never asked for, and they're trying to figure out how to live again with the circumstances they're prevented with, the common theme without exception, if they've been driving before, that's the thing they miss most. Even if it was just using the opportunity to drive from A to B because they could independently without having to involve anyone else. That's what the constant theme I was getting, that they missed that most. And I could have resonant, I could associate with that. Because I missed it, having never done it, but I still missed it. I wanted to drive. So I started to think about how I could, is there a way again? Is there a way that I could get these people, if only for a few minutes like me, to enjoy, not world records, but if only for a few minutes to enjoy being behind the wheel again? How could that happen? How would we achieve that? And so I started to think about it and approach it from a how do you do it rather than it can't be done type approach, in the same way that I'd approach things for myself. So how would I want to do this? Make it safe, but still make it fun. So I decided that a car we would need to be an open top, so it's extremely tactile and auditory. But then I needed to make it possible and safe for the individual to be behind the wheel. So I decided then that the car would need to have dual control pedals in the traditional way that learner cars have, but we need a bit more security and safety built into that. So I decided that we would have to have twin steering wheels, so that the instructor would be able to assist in the experience, but also keep the car where it needs to be and keep the passenger, that's a key point actually, keep the participant on the track. So after many a long year, probably about 5, of thinking how I could do it, I decided with my friend John again, his co-founder, who's helped me with the world records. I spoke to John and said, look, John, I've got this idea. He went, oh God, what now?
I want 300 mile now.
yeah. Well, I have muted that now and again. But he said, well, so I said, well, you've come to car shows with me. You've met these people that can't drive and wish they could. I want to set an organisation up that gives them a chance to do that. And I explained the outline of how the cars would work and that sort of thing. And he said, well, okay, I think what you're talking about is fabulous, and I'm happy to assist and go down that road and help. Let's see if we can make it happen. So we give up our day jobs, set up an organisation. It's not a charity at this point, but so we set up the organisation speeder site, and then we were set up. And this is still an organisation that's just got the two of us. So, and we're still learning as we go here. Never been done before that I'm aware of, and certainly we haven't done anything like this. So, first thing we needed to do is find someone who could make the car it needed, and then B, find someone else who could pay for it. And eventually we did that. We found a car, and we found a very nice gentleman who offered to support us and purchase the vehicle. So we had our first car, and we then needed to find somewhere to drive it. So we initially looked at car parks, nice big car parks that people could have a go in. And shortly after that, we thought, well, one car, we need more than one car, because cars have a very annoying habit of breaking down. So if one breaks down, then that means that the day can't go ahead. So we were very fortunate. We had a guy that could build the cars. We already had him. So we found another very lovely gentleman, local businessman, who was able to support and finance the second vehicle. So now we've got two. We're moving forward. We're starting to get a bit more known, and we started to, after a lot of hard work, move away from car parks onto actual raised tracks, which was where we wanted to go in the end. So we're now at this point a registered charity, still very small, and we are still small now. So the work that we do can only happen if you can engage people to support you and volunteer. And we've been very lucky from very early days to grow a volunteer base. And the volunteer base we have now is absolutely fantastic. And this charity wouldn't exist without them. There's no way it could go ahead. So our instructors who get in the cars with our participants are all driving instructors, approved driving instructors. And we have marshals, we have meet and greet people, so everyone's made welcome when they arrive at the circuit we're at. And we make sure that everyone has a fabulous time. And we try to stick with our motto: there's no passengers in speed of sight.
Wow, that's a great motto. And I'm right in thinking that you do corporate days where you even get people who do have their vision, and you blindfold them, and then run them through that experience as well.
We do that from time to time, which is a great experience. Or sometimes what we do, and we've had quite a lot of occasions when this has happened, where we will get someone who's living with a disability, but they've got a family member, which that could be a sister or brother or mum or dad, and they would say, well, I wouldn't mind driving the car, having a go in a sports car myself. So some days you'll get a brother and sister, one's got no disability and somebody has, and they can go home enjoying an activity that they both took part in, and that's fabulous. And when we set the charity up, my expectation is that all our drivers would be people in adult life who'd been struck down with a disability that meant they couldn't drive anymore. To my surprise and extreme pleasure, is half of our drivers now are young children or teenagers. And these particular young children and teenagers will be in exactly the same position I was in. They'll never be able to pass a driving test. However, we still give them the chance to get behind the wheel on a race circuit, and that's a big boost for them. They love it, and we love making sure they can do it.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. I've done when I was playing professional cricket, we had the England visually impaired squad come and have an afternoon with us, and they gave us a set of glasses that they quite cheekily called beer goggles. So we put them on, and then they tried to get us to play cricket, and it was great fun. But not only that, it was just the experience of being able to resonate with what they're going through, and then for them to have a connection with us on the day and participate. I mean, none of us were family members, but we were sort of bonded with the love
Yeah,
of the game and the
there you
sport that we're
go.
playing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. What you're doing, Mike, is amazing. I think if there's one message that really has come out from me is this idea of point yourself in the direction you want to go, and as you beautifully put it, put the pedal through the carpet. I think that for me is something that is resonating with me. But just before we wrap up, I'm very conscious of time. Is there anything that a person that you have that's inspired you growing up, or maybe even whether it's like a quote or something that you had heard that growing up that sort of resonated you and stuck with you throughout all of your goals and aspirations and your achievements and records that you've had?
Well, one of my treasured memories is that when I was 18, and I realized at this point I was never going to drive. But when I was 18, I got my first guide dog, and when I walked down the street for the first time with my dog, I know I was no longer a blind man. I was a guy walking his dog, and that memory lives in me today, or many years later. And I think that might have been that was probably the day when I realized, yeah, you can do what you want. That's the bit. I think that my dogs have made such an impact in my life. They've given me so much independence and confidence that the first day I walked down with Usher was a remarkable experience. And lots of people who can't see will use white canes. I'm not criticizing that or but for me, it didn't work. And walking down the road with my dog was a wonderful experience. And coincidentally, my dog I've got now is called Stan, and he's my 7th guide dog. And someone had come up with the idea a few years ago, it'd be quite cool to name our cars after my guide dogs.
Yeah, right.
And it gives the cars a bit of character. So we've got 4 cars at the moment. So we've got Usher, Simon, Charlie, and Ross.
Right.
And it gives them a bit of character, makes them a bit more personable, and it also honours my dogs in their memories.
I love that. That's brilliant. Mike, just before we wrap up, for people to get in touch with you and the charity, where should they go?
So they can contact us in the old-fashioned way by telephone, and that number is 0161 714 4567. That's 0161 714 4567. They can email me at mike@speedofsight.org. That's mike@speedofsight.org. Or they can go to our website, which is simply speedofsight.org.
No problem. I will put all of those links in the show notes for this. But Mike, thank you so much for your time and telling your story. I really do appreciate it. And my brother was correct in the end.
Well, thanks for your interest and your support. The one thing that's fabulous about sport, as you all know, it really does include everybody, and it can include everybody.
Yeah, it does. No, thank you so much. Appreciate it.